I think I do. So you
Alrighty. Well, I'll just say next. How's that?
sounds like a good idea.
Okay, so next. To start off with, um, these are a select of, I don't know, about 50, 60 photos. They're sort of what I consider my, um, not my best necessarily, but my most important photos, ranging from editorial work to um, uh, you name it. I have a whole litany of photos that cover all my different activities over the last 50 some years. This is Muhammad Ali at a boxing um, exhibition with Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor at the time and was a fundraiser, and Julian Bond was the referee. And they were doing their bouncing back and forth and throwing punches and all that. And all of a sudden, you see Maynard go sort of an exaggerated punch, and Ali goes down on the ground, and there's Maynard over him with that victory, I got you, and Julian Bond calling him out 1, 2, to 10 and all that. And as they say, a good time was had by all. The guy is a fabulous. Well, Maynard was just a great guy to see and talk to and whatever. And of course, Ali was Ali, talking to the press and chewing everybody and having a good time. So it was, not a serious event, but it was a good time had by all. I guess they raised a bunch of money for whoever was sponsoring the event. Next. This is a rally in Syracuse, New York in 1971. It was called a Pro America rally, one of the ones that was going on around the country because of all the anti-war going on. This picture was the last photo that I had published in Life magazine. I had freelanced for them a few times early on, but and it wasn't on assignment. I had sent it in for a Pictures of the Year competition, and they picked it and ran it in the magazine. That was the second or third last publication of Life magazine. So my goal when I was in high school was to be a Life magazine photographer, but by the time I got around to going through college and then working for a while and going to Vietnam and coming back, the magazine decided that they were going to go out of business in 1972. So anyhow, it was a short story for me, but at least I made the last issue, one of the last issues of Life magazine. Next. This was during my stay in Southeast Asia. I was in Sydney, Australia, had a week of R&R, rest and recreation, they called it, but I was running around that part of the country most of the week I was there. And came across this park where this nun was playing soccer. And I just couldn't believe that somebody like that was out there playing like that, and the expression on her face. I mean, this lady was good. I mean, when she kicked the ball, it went further than I think anybody else that was out there. But it was a great experience to be in Sydney. I hadn't been there before, and we made a trip a few years ago later. But it was an interesting experience and one of my favorite photos from that trip. Next. I did a lot of aerial photography in Vietnam and somewhat before that. But when I got back, I ended up with doing a lot of work, and I was doing a lot of photos of Atlanta. And back then, I could afford to hire a helicopter to do work that I really wanted to be able to cover. This one, the client wanted a unique photo of the Atlanta International Airport. And I had a very good helicopter pilot at PDK who I had flown with for quite a while. And he, of course, had to get the clearance for us to go up. And one day he had been trying for like a month to get the clearance. And one day he called me up and he says, "You need to be here in an hour. We'll have 15 minutes in the air." So I got down to the PDK and we flew down to the Petrie DeKalb Airport. They were going to have some kind of close down or some like 30 minutes or 45 minutes where there'd be no airplanes taking off and landing. So we flew around the perimeter of the airport trying to get the shot. And then when we came back here, I noticed that all the planes in the foreground were there, and then there were empty slots back in the D and C and D concourse and stuff like that. So, and then off in the distance, you'll be able to see to the upper left side of the curvature of the Earth. That's the city of Atlanta. And I had about 15 minutes and shot the heck out of a couple rolls of film till we had to get the hell out of there. But this picture has gone very well. I've had a New York agents from 1965 to 1988. I think she closed her business. And she did a hell of a job licensing photos over the years. And this is one that got licensed quite a bit. Next. This is a fireworks from during the
Olympics.
The Olympics, yeah, thank you. The Olympics that I had access to one of the hotels there, and I will let you know that this is a computer image because there's no such thing as those many fireworks going off in Atlanta at night. So I did my due diligence to make it look more exciting and interesting. So that's what it came up with. I haven't seen anybody duplicate anything like it before or since, but I was real happy. It sort of gave the idea of what the Olympics was all about with the fireworks, and the place was crowded. You can see people down there in the main area where they're having a concert, I think. So it was a very exciting time to cover. Next. This was symbolic of what I thought the Olympics was all about. And I had my show. This was the picture that that sort of gave me the sense of what it was about. I had done some coverage of the Olympics. I didn't have a credential to cover the actual events, except we did get to opening ceremonies. And so this one was the picture that's been in I had two shows, one in Roswell, and then we moved that down to the APG. I don't know if you guys have been to Atlanta Photo Gallery, but they have some terrific, if you take a trip to Atlanta to go to galleries, that's one you need to go to because they always have an interesting exhibit down there. And next. Oh, I think you jumped one. Okay. This is Milwaukee, 1969. I just got back from Vietnam and working for the newspaper there. And while I was between Cleveland, where my last duty was, and Syracuse, where I ended up going to graduate school. And that's where I met my wife, and we got married and moved to Syracuse in '69. But I had a 3-month stint there, and I did a lot of coverage of sports and news and stuff like that. And then they always have the weather picture. When nothing was going on in the newsroom, they say, go out and take a weather picture. We need to fill the paper. And so I'm out there in this misty day, and I'm on a street, side street there in Milwaukee, and I make a number of photos. And I sort of like this. Now, I don't know how many of you have worked in the darkroom, but back then, this is all black and white newspaper work. So went in the darkroom, and there was like 5 levels of contrast: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, maybe 6. I don't remember exactly. And what you usually use was a number 2 paper. I made a print on number 2 paper, and I said, well, I like the picture, but there's something wrong with it. So I went to 3, then I went to 4, and then I was a paper with some of those famous Midwest photographers I got to know there, and I see one of the guys that I had met earlier, and I said, "Hey, you got any 5 paper or maybe 6?" So whatever he gave me, and this was the picture that came out because it popped. To be up to that point, it was just drab, and so this one made the difference with getting some decent blacks and some decent whites in there, and it's grainy because it's a tri-X, but I like the grain, so it worked for me. And they ran it almost a full page or half page, excuse me, on the evening newspaper. Next, please. The Olympics, the ring that's Fountain of Rings, which is probably the most popular playground park in Atlanta. I mean, anytime it's decent weather out there or not so decent weather, you got the people, you know, enjoying themselves. And what's interesting is no matter when I've shot it, time of day or time of the year, almost, you hardly get the same effect. I don't have one that's everything's, the water changes, the wind will change something. Of course, the fountains change all the time too. If you haven't been down there, it's a lot of fun to photograph. And sometimes it clears up where you can see the people better. But this one is out of all that I've shot the photos, it's my favorite. Next. This is shot from the Roswell Road at the Chattahoochee River, the road that goes from Roswell to Sandy Springs, and it's used for all sorts of boating events. They do some fishing there. Most fishing is north of there and south of there, and twice a year, where those birds are, you center that picture twice a year. It turns out to be my wife's birthday. That when in October, middle of October, the sun sets right over the river, and then of course we'll do the same thing 6 months later. When I first got to Atlanta, to Roswell, I had a 500 millimeter mirror lens that I shot a picture, and the mirror was so big it filled the frame, so I didn't get much. I got a great photo of the sun, but it wasn't much else out there. But I've been back many times on various parts of the river. This one's one of my favorite because you can park walking distance. You park off the street, walking distance, and there's a fairly decent sidewalk that you can walk across. They have hung some wires, electric wires, across it now, so it's a little more problematic getting the picture you want. I think now you have to do a little retouching of the wires that go through. It's right. They would have been right about where those boaters are. So anyhow, but you can work around that now. But it gives you some great skies and great light and great photos. And there's also sometimes the place is full and they have a one of their competitions with the high school and college kids with their different boats that they run from one to the other. But it's, again, it's a wonderful place to shoot pictures. Next. This is a CNN Center. At one time there was an ice skating rink there. They made this into a place for meals, and then there's a CNN had a afternoon talk show. It's on the right, middle right there. This is an interesting project. I do what I call computer-aided photography, which allows me to use film cameras and images and technology, computers, to put together pictures like this. This has about 36 photos put in sequences, about I don't know, 6x7 or 6x6 images, and to make to get the whole feeling of it, and you can't do it with a fisheye. There's no lens that you can possibly do it. I'm not sure if there is any kind of camera that would capture the scope of this. But I had done a photo for the architect when they built the Braves new stadium, Turner Field, and I had done one that was about 8 images for the where you go into the area where they have the food vendors and the screen where you're walking into the stadium. And when they got this project, they called me and asked me if I could do something like that. And so I sent them something like a 16 by 20, I know 20 by 24-inch print I had made, because when we did the scans, we did them at about 600 DPI, so we had plenty of guts to it. And I sent them a large print by FedEx, and they got it Monday. And he calls me up. He says, "Ron, love the photo, but you can make it twice the size." I said, "Yeah, I'm sure I can." And I called up the lab and I said, "Hey, think we can get that up to 24 by 48? He says, "No problem, there's plenty there." And so he made like 2 prints. Ted Turner got a couple for his office. So it was a fun job. What's different is that when you go to the stadium, or when you go to CNN Center, and I guess you won't be able to in the future because CNN's moving away, but that red stripe up the escalator was not in the original photo. And the architect called me and he says, "Hey, we designed this thing with a red stripe up the escalator. Can you fix that for me, for us, for you? Can you fix it?" And my friend, who was the computer genius who put this picture together, he had it knocked out like the next day, and they loved it. So that was a very successful assignment. Next, please. By the way, if somebody wants to ask questions, we can wait till the end, but if somebody wants to pipe up and ask a question, let me know. This is another one of my computer images. This is the Atlanta United Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and this is about 12 photos. Actually done with my cell phone, with my I have a Google 7 Pro, and I had gone and used my I had another camera that was a pretty good camera, and it didn't look like a camera. It looked like a phone, but it was called a L16, and it had 16 lenses on it, and I could do something to create a photo with that camera. But this time I didn't have anything with me but the cell phone, so we were in a good location. It was too bad there wasn't clouds or something in the sky, but this just shows off the stadium. And my client, who wanted something different of the stadium, got this one. Next, please. Coretta Scott King was a force to be reckoned with. She this picture reminds me of a similar photo I saw in Life magazine of her at the ML King funeral. A gentleman that I only knew by name had taken a picture of her at the ceremony with her daughter's head in her lap, and made the cover of Life magazine. I was at one of the Ebenezer Baptist Church's ceremony celebration for ML King Day, and I'm working the crowd and going walking around getting different photos. A couple important people, a lot of important people were there, and I saw her sitting there waiting for, just listening or whatever, and I got this photo and didn't think anything of it, except when I got back home and I laid the film strips on the table. I never shoot one frame of anything. I shoot horizontals and verticals, because no matter what it is, I've been working with magazines and clients and art directors and you name it, anybody who publishes anything, I work for them or work with them. And when I first started out, an editor said to me, Ron, when you go out and shoot both. He says, because sometimes if I'm doing a layout or if I need a vertical and you just gave me a horizontal. So I learned that lesson a long time ago, and man, it paid off because I never had another one question whether their picture they wanted to use would fit the page. So, but this one was unique because I'm looking at the contact sheet and then I look at the film and there's only one frame. And it was perfect, but it could have, there could have been, her eyes could have been closed or something. Maybe that would have been okay too, but that is just not the way I worked. So I was very happy that the picture that I found there was for me a perfect frame, and she was very happy with it when I presented her the photo. Next, please. This was the Doraville fire in 1972. This is Buzzard Sewell, who was a Hall County fireman. The fire itself was 52 years ago, actually now 53 years ago. Vapors from the overfilled tank caught the pilot light that was on a house nearby that burnt down. The explosions set 3 tanks on fire. 300 people were evacuated. 20 firefighters were hospitalized, 2 fatalities, and flames reached 400 feet. I actually got, first of all, I mentioned when I talked to people about this photo, there was no police line there. In fact, there was nobody standing around saying you can't go there. And so the few press people that were there, we just sort of wandered around and got the pictures we wanted. I actually got too close to the fire because I felt my eyebrows had singed a little bit, so I backed off from there. The editor of Georgia Magazine, Jim Townsend, liked the photo so much he ran 7-page article in his Georgia Magazine, and then he did an oversized poster of one of the images of the firemen and the fire fighting the fire, and they put in a smaller section, part of it with Buzzard Sewell in there, and the headline was Buzzard Sewell was there, and so was Ron Sherman. So it was a great poster. I sent it out to a lot of people. The couple of fire departments called me, and so I told them to send me a list of the other fire departments. So Jim Townsend put together a package and sent them these posters that went, I guess, all through the general area of Atlanta, because there were about 6 or 8, or I don't know, there were almost maybe a dozen fire departments that came to the fire. So it was a very popular poster for the fire department. Next. This was Syracuse again, 69, 71. And this is a case of mistaken film in the camera. It was a mistake then, but it wasn't a mistake afterwards, because I was inside the tent shooting on inside film, tungsten film, and then came outside and I saw this guy working the elephants, taking care of them and all that. And so I made some photos, and then when I got home and I took the film out and I said, oh crap, it's tungsten film. Well, I sent it off. And when I got the film back, I was delighted, because if I had shot daylight film, it probably would have looked like mud, which is a lot there, but there was been no spunk to it. And this, I didn't do any levels or anything except to lighten it up a bit because it was a little dark. So sometimes a mistake can be a good mistake and not a bad mistake. Next. George Wallace was another power to be. Interesting. This was at the Southern Governors Conference. I also photographed him at the Georgia State Capitol when he was visiting the Governor Jimmy Carter. And then years later, after he was shot, I was in Montgomery doing a feature story for Newsweek on him and what he was doing in Montgomery back then. But he he doesn't really pose, but the expressions on his face were always very interesting. And this was one of my favorite ones of him, just because he always had that cigar in his mouth, unless he was in a presentation or behind the microphone. Next. This is the most important photo I've ever made. I call it, it's unique in that there were probably 100 photographers on the field when Hank, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the word. It's probably the most iconic photo that I made, and the only photo that was made by anybody in the crowd, except there were a few people who had some pictures from a long distance away with the boys coming around. I was when I came to Atlanta in '71, one of my people that are companies that I had worked with down in Florida in the '60s was United Press International, and I'd strung for them down there when I was working in Florida. And I was a stringer when I first came to Atlanta. They had me going to places or times when they didn't have enough people covering what they needed to cover. So for this game, I think they had 4 or 5 photographers. And I picked the third base side because I knew that Hank was right-handed, and when he swung, he'd be facing towards me when he finished the swing. And I didn't think much of it. There was early festivities where they had a bust made of him, and he and his wife were there, and Maynard Jackson was there. Sammy Davis Jr. was there. The Jimmy Carter governor was there for this pre-ceremony stuff that was going on, and everybody was having a good time. And then the game started, and first time he got up at bat, I think he fouled out or whatever it was. He didn't make it to base. Second time, crack of the bat. I had the color camera on him for that, and then switched as he was going to first, second, and third. As he's coming around second, I got a 300 millimeter lens on him, and it zeroes in pretty tight. And I just started to see something happening on the field, and I could sort of see it, but it was only a split second where these guys came on the field, touched him, and went on his way. So when the game's over, we take the film to the UPI had a dark room at the stadium, so they went through the film and all that. And I've been good friends with these guys there, and they give everybody a hard time anyhow, sort of like a fraternity. And the guy, a picture editor, looks at it and he says, "Hey, Ron, you got a pretty decent picture here." I said, what is it? He says, "Hank being touched by 2 kids." So, excuse me. So I go home and get the film. I own all the film. UPI just allows them to use the photos, but I get the film. One of the things is when they send out a photo, the caption reads, what's going on, but then the guy who sends it has an initials, and the guy who photographed it has initials. So it turned out the initials was RS and RS. And so that picture went unnamed for about 20 years, I guess it was, because then UPI executive picture editor asked me to send him the negative. He took it, and I forgot about it. And then about 10 years later, I see the picture. There was the top 100 events for the 70s. And that was number 10, and it had a caption, a photo credit as Bettman Archives. Bettman Archives had taken over the UPI archives of photos, and then Corbis had bought it. So about a year or so later, I'm in Washington, and there's a Corbis representative there. And I asked him, "Hey, I think you have one of my photos." He says, "Were you a UPI photographer?" I said, "Yep." He says, "Which one is it?" "The Hank Aaron picture." "Oh, that one." So we negotiated. I got the negative back, and Then recently, let's flash forward to last year. A friend of mine's at the Baseball Hall of Fame. And he says, "Hey, Ron, your picture's hanging in the Baseball Hall of Fame." And I said, "Oh, yeah, which photo?" It says, "The Hank Aaron picture, dummy." I said, "Oh, that one. How'd they get it?" "I don't know. I'll find out." So this person calls me back, a lady who's an archivist called me back. Turns out they bought an 8x10 picture from Corbis and they blew it up to, I don't know, 5x8. And it looked, and my friend said, "Boy, it looks like a really lousy photo. They must have copied it for something." So I negotiate with the Baseball Hall of Fame because I knew ahead of time, this friend of mine was trying to sell him photos, and he says, "Well, we don't buy photos." So when I talked to them, he said, "I'll tell you what, I will get you a high-res photo and send it to you so you can redo that print. But I want a plaque. I want my name on that photo, plaque or whatever." And that's how finally, after all these years, my name was attached to that photo. So it's was a happy event for me. Next, please. This is one of my. I covered almost every politician from 1971 to, excuse me, to Jimmy Carter winning the presidency. So I've had lots of these happy events where somebody has won an election. But all the people I've photographed, this was my favorite because in most of the cases, you got the solemn speaker on the podium and the people, this is, you know, they cheered before and all that, but then everyone's solemn when he's making his thank you speech and all that. Well, this one, everybody was happy and talking. And this might have been right before Andy Young started speaking, and Gene, his wife, was right there. This picture was used for Atlanta Celebrates Photography as a string of photos that different people had, fairly large photos on the walk that's now in Atlanta. And I'm over there taking some pictures because I had just been there. And these are large photos, I don't know, 24 by 36, maybe even bigger, or 30 by 40 on these basically a string of photos that cover the walkway at the height that you're walking at. They're not above and all that. And this gentleman comes up and he's looking at the photo. He's looking close at it and he looks back at me. He says, "You the photographer?" I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He says, and he started naming everybody in the photo. I knew most of them by name. This guy knew everybody. So he was one from the neighborhood. Anyhow, that's why this picture was picked, because again, a happy celebration with a great person who was a great mayor of Atlanta and the U.S. ambassador. Next, please. Jimmy Carter. Photographed him when he was governor, there when he announced for the presidency, flew down to Florida with him when he was down there promoting his bid for the election. I was at the inauguration and also the night he won in Atlanta, and then I drove down the plains and covered him down there. So this is one of many hand-holding photos that are handshaking photos that I did over the years. The name Jimmy Who, I think I don't think I had anything to do with it getting out, that somebody had said, but we were down in Florida. He was on his way down to the field. The Secret Service was between him and me, and I was behind him. The Secret Service knew me by then because I'd been around them so much that they just knew me and let me go where I wanted to go. And so this guy taps me on the shoulder as I'm walking behind, and he says, "Who's that?" I said, "Governor Jimmy Carter. He's running for president." He says, "Jimmy who?" So when I got back to the plane, and one of the Secret Service, I was sitting next to one of the Secret Service guys. I said, and there was a reporter on the other side of me. I said, "Well, I told him the story." So I don't know. Soon after that, it was the Jimmy Who little quip, but he made it to the presidency, and I sort of got out of covering politics because everybody after him and some of the other people I covered were boring. So I moved on to other things. Next. My favorite place, Chastain Park. It's just such a great place with all the activities they have, baseball fields, tennis courts, and all that. And this is one of my favorite spring photos. Next. Lester Maddox. He was a character. I have a picture of him and Jimmy Carter, one of my first photos I had at the state capitol, and they're back to back, and neither of them are smiling. They were not friends. And because Lester was governor, and then Jimmy Carter took over, and then Lester had run against him and didn't win. And then this was after, I'm not sure if he was still in politics, but he was helping people raise money and stuff like that. And this was some event that UPI had sent me to. And this is typical people standing around talking. Anyhow, he goes over and sees this donkey and starts talking to him. And I said something to him. I said, "Hey, Governor," because he always liked to be called Governor. "Governor, would you talk to him for a second?" And he grabs him by the underneath there and poses pose photo. But that's one of my favorite photos of Lester Maddox. Next. Yes, the 1969 March on Washington. I had just been back in the U.S. Well, for 6 months, and drove down to well, actually, I was in Syracuse at the time and drove down to DC. I had family down there, so I had a place to stay, and it was a pretty remarkable event. There were several 100,000 people at the march. It was peaceful for the longest time, but then when it got close to where the Justice Department was, I'm trying to remember the name of the head justice guy. He decided, I don't want those people near the Justice Department. So all of a sudden there was tear gas and a lot of commotion. This picture will be on PBS's show. I think it's later this month about Nixon. There's a picture of Nixon, and it's in the headline is something about a madman and his trying to stop the stop this kind of protests. And so it did get a little nasty for a while, but people made their point, and things changed after 1969, though it took them a while. Next. This is the Masters. Let me show my look here. 1975 Masters in Augusta, Georgia. Johnny Miller and Tom Weisskopf and Jack Nicklaus for a never-before three-way shootout on the 18th green with a trio of the game's most glamorous players. In fact, those three were named the top 3 golfers of all times. Gary Player was the 1974 Masters winner, who was putting the green jacket on Jack Nicklaus, and you have Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer in the black and white picture. And this was the 18th green, and this is with a wide lux camera, so I got that good panoramic of it. The people were all, of course, naturally dressed, and that was my third. I only went to about 3 or 4 different Masters. This is the most fun because I was shooting for UPI. I wasn't really on assignment for anybody, just for them to get photos when they were spread out. And they only had 4 or 5 photographers, but they were trying to cover early on the matches. There were too many too many golfers that were doing well and not enough photographers. So it's an amazing event. If you ever get a chance to go, I took my kids once to the Wednesday putting, because you could just go up and pay some money and go in there. But you have to need a reservation now to even get into that. Next, this is Memorial Day in Roswell, and it's just my favorite photo for that day. When I saw that with the Marine and this child, it just reminded me of the good aspects of what these guys did, will do, and their relationship. I think just with their family, as I can tell, and with life. I respect all of them, of course, since I was involved, but just to me, that day is special. And Roswell has one of the largest Memorial Day celebrations. But it's and I shoot the crowds and I shoot the speakers, but none of that meant anything to me until I saw this photo. Next, a Petrie Road Race. It's I've covered it for 20 some years. This one I just like because the end of the race, the water from the fire hoses. I have found another picture that I did not put in this one that showed a similar picture of the World War II Navy guy holding the woman, and in this picture was a close-up of the sort of the same thing. But this picture just commemorates the the hard work that these people do to get down from the start to the finish of the race. Next. Vietnam, Wheatfield, did a lot of aerial photography over there, and some of it was for me, and some of it was for the Army. And just when I'm out shooting, pictures that I wasn't shooting for the Army, I could keep, so I did. And this is one of my favorite ones. It's just like the farmer looking up, knowing that we were there, not necessarily for him. We don't know what his politics was, but I just like the way that the crop was and the contrast and the hard work that these people have to do to make a living. Next, this is the fire from Doraville. You can see the tanks, and they were in pretty bad shape. It took them 3 days to get the fire turned off. Next. There's the one where the 400 feet of fire went. It blackened the sky for quite a while. Next. A better view, just seeing the size of the tanks and the guys, how close they are to the fire. Next. And one of the firemen who was overheated and rushed to the hospital. And they had their triage tent right there, so the guys they had nurses. Next. And this was the house that burnt, and the cars of course were destroyed, but there's only one house. There are other houses that were close, but the firemen kept them from burning. Next. And this is the poster that was sent out. Next. Maynard Jackson. This is my favorite photo of him. I photographed him numerous times when he was running mayor both times, and when he was out and about. And it just that smile on his face and the connection with the kids, just to me was a perfect photo showing the personality of him, and one of my favorite photos of him. Next. Voting. When he was first time he was running for mayor, he changed his hairdo from first time he was mayor to the second time he was mayor. So I don't remember if I think this was the short version, and then he had a little longer version the other time. Next, please. All right, so this is a contrast to the first one. I was planning on changing things around and making them a little closer, but this is the first one that and the last one I had done, and I left it as is. So it's a little not discombobulated, but out of sync. Here is the typical him speaking, and the people very solemn, and of course they did cheer before and after. This is Maynard's second. Yeah, this would have been the second time he got elected, so his hair is a little bit longer. Next. And playing tennis demonstration. Getting out there and pretty much did, you know, what he wanted to do. Next. And with Pepper Rogers and forgot the again another promotion for excuse me for promoting Atlanta, and he was good at promoting Atlanta. Next. And this was the day that Martin Luther King's wife was assassinated. And this is the man on the left was Arthur Kaplan, who was a paramedic and a judge for the city of Atlanta, and Maynard before he called on the widower of the slain mother of Martin Luther King, and the family was there. And he's just good at consoling people, and he had to do a lot of it. Next. Oh, here's the boxing match with Julian Bond, and you can see all the press. There was fans there, press was there. A couple of my friends are in the background there. Next. And there's the winning blow and victory stance. Next. And this I put in because I thought there was an interesting dichotomy to that photo, in that here you have the mayor John Kerry from IBM, who was the head guy at IBM down to open the new computer company GSD headquarters in Northside Drive in Maynard Jackson, and the flag behind them has the Confederate symbol on it. And I didn't really. This is one where I didn't really think about it or see it actually as what I've just interpreted, but I just thought it was different and interesting that at this day and age, and this is before they changed the flag. So, but and this is when his hair had changed. But, he was a dynamic person. Next. Oh, back up one. Oh, this is the picture where Maynard and I'm sorry, Jimmy Carter and lost my train here. Had part of the ways they were at the Capitol doing something that official, and so they were together on the platform. But Lester and Hay, as you think they were friends in that photo, but they really weren't. Next. Oh, this is the stadium in Florida, where he was coming up afterwards, greeting people. Next. And again, the solemn faces of everybody, because this is when he won the night he won the primary. Next. Somehow or another that got that got in a second time. Next. This was the Carter debate with Gerald Ford, and UPI was short a person, so I said, "Can you go in and do the before picture?" So I went in and I just love the photo here. The two guys are getting ready for the debate in a train like formation, and very very solemn, very I'm sure tight tight because this debate made, I think this is the debate that made a difference. Next. Newsweek had me go to Plains to do a cover story, a story for a cover, and so I spent a couple days down there and doing the life in the day of a candidate. So this was Rosalind and him getting the ready for some more campaigning, and they opened their house. What's interesting about the set of photos is Jody Powell, who was the press secretary, was told by Newsweek that I needed some time down there, and so I talked to Jody a day or two before I left, and I went down to Plains, and I could pull up to the house, and Secret Service sees me and says I'm here to see Jimmy Carter, or the governor, and he knew me, and he says just go knock on the door. So I can go knock on the door, and the governor comes, looks at me, and he says, yes. I said, sir, I'm here to take your picture for the cover of Newsweek. And I said, Jody has cleared it, and it was, he says, and I just saw his eyes roll. But anyhow, he invited me in, and I spent the next day and a half there with him. Next. And in his office, they wanted a little of everything, what he did down there. I had a lot of early photos of him with Billy and around the peanut factory, but they wanted sort of now pictures. Next. And this was theoretically the cover was going to be the cover of Newsweek magazine, but Newsweek took so much time deciding on when to run each of the covers because they've always had a single shot of the two candidates on different issues. And by the time they got around to it, I had a call from the picture editor when it was going to press, and I said, Ron, the bad news is your picture's not going to be on the cover. They're using headshots. So I got paid for the fee of going down there. I didn't get the cover fee, and it would have been nice to have that with the Newsweek logo on the above. But this picture was used on 3 or 4 book covers different people had written. So it did get to see the light of day. Next. Now this is Victory Night in Atlanta. And next, and this was some of the crowd that was there. Next. And this is Plains. I drove down to Plains and got there in time to cover more subdued. Well, that was subdued because he got in and they rallied. But it's just such a different atmosphere from the Hyatt Regency, I think, where it was in Atlanta, to Plains, Georgia. Next. And the inauguration. I was not the official one of the official photographers for UPI, but I was the guy that was supposed to get filmed to them, and so I had a credential for that, which allowed me everywhere, just like the photographer. So I took advantage of it. And then I got next, and then I got a chance to ride on the truck that was ahead of the thing, and when he popped out, I made that photo for posterity. Next. And then this is Andy Young, who was being announced as ambassador to the UN. Next. And there's that picture. I think what I did was I combined 2 shows. So anyhow, this is a picture that we saw earlier, him marching with John Lewis, which he did many times. Next. Official portrait after he left the UN, but was for a magazine article. Next. Coretta Scott King, who was a force to be reckoned with. She's a very strong person and knew exactly what she wanted. And this is a project that I'd done with an art director friend of mine that never got published by the ML King Center, but I have the photos, so they were used over and over again with Daddy King. Next. Coretta at one of the events in Ebenezer Baptist Church. Next, with Rosa Parks. I think this was the event where where I got distracted or something, but it's the only time I photographed Rosa Parks, and the only time I was able to get her with Coretta. And this was just casual. She just came up, started talking to her. I made more than one photo of that, and this was the best of the lot. Next. And this was, I was doing this project, and I was at a meeting, and Coretta was there with her staff at this King Center, and the art director friend of mine was there. And she said, you know what I really like would be a nighttime shot aerial of the King Center. And so, of course, I raised my hand and said, hey, I said, I can't shoot from a helicopter at night without, decent lighting and stuff. And it would be, I said, by the way, is there any chance you can get a hook and ladder truck? I said, that would be a great platform, and then I could control, the picture. And she said she'd see what she can do. And a week later, I get a call from her staff saying, we got the hook and ladder truck. When do you want it and where? I said, well, just tell the fire department I need it on a sunny day so I get a decent sunset. And I knew I wanted the sunset. And so that day came, and I got up on top of the ladder with the fireman right behind me, I guess to catch me if I fell, and got the photo with the Kodachrome 200, and got the picture she wanted. It never did get used for this brochure that she was doing, but it got used many times. Thank you. Next. And then I got into computer imaging with a friend of mine. So we started doing work that couldn't be done any other way except on a computer, or very expensively by having, they used to strip film and put that picture of the rug on top of another picture, but that was done by a technician in a lab. And this we could do in very rudimentary software, but it could be done. Next. This is a Atlantic steel, and this was when I started using color negative film, especially in a steel mill that dark. And this was 8 photos shot vertically for this brochure. So this was, they had the schematics would have been on the bottom part where that sample was, and the type, and they did it like 8/16, almost. When you opened it up, it was almost like 24 or 30 inches wide. We did it for 3 different power plants, steel plants. And years later, when I was getting my finding these negatives, I scanned them and put them in Photoshop. And where my friend who was doing the digital work took him hours to put this thing together, I scanned them and I had the finished product in about, I don't know, 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It didn't take that long. What took a long time was, since it was a section, there were sections where there was no steel, you couldn't see a steel. That took me an hour to put it together. The problem next was when I printed it out, there was so much density, not density, but color in the print I made that I had to tone it down almost 20, 30 or 40%, because a steel mill would never look this bright. And this is brighter than the steel mill looked when it was there. It was an interesting challenge, and the client was happy with it when we shot it, though the 4 or 5 step process actually diminished the way it looked in the brochure, but they were happy. Next. This is one of the first panoramics we put together. You can see the before and the after. And this was shot on color negative film. We made then prints, and then he scanned the pictures and then put it together. And we brightened the trees a little bit. They weren't as yellow as that was, but the client wanted something where they could see the trees in the building. So I had to get up very close, because if you back up, the trees would have covered the building. Next. this is the first job I did for the architect, and that finished print was 48 inches when he did that one, and that's when and that was 7 images, not 8. And by using the high resolution, I was able to make it bigger. Next. This was Walk in the Woods 2014. That was the before above. This was sort of the after the art director one. This was 22 feet high and 132 feet long. That was in the back. This was the Nick Nolte movie, Walk in the Woods, about the guys that were walking up the Appalachian Trail, and Robert Redford was the star besides Nick Nolte. Next. And this is the finished picture that was hanging in the studio.
Wow.
And next, you'll see how much they used. About 35 feet or 135 feet. But I still got paid what they paid me for. They just used, as they used to say, the rest is on the cutting room floor. But again, the client was happy with it. I think I did. I have another job coming up with them. Next, and this should be the last one, I think. Yeah, this is a Chuck Rogers presentation up in North Georgia, and I've done this for a lot of photographer friends of mine who had presentations, and rather than shooting just the shot of them with the presentation and the people in the audience, I started doing this a few years ago using different cameras of doing this shooting. This was about 4 images put together, and so they see the whole room and the presentation. And Chuck patted me on the back and says, "That's the finest picture I've ever had taken of me." I said, "But you can't really see it." He says, "That's good enough." So anyhow, that's the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, bring them on.
Ron, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. It was